Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of Infinite Origins with Din J. I'm your host, Din Jarin, Din J, El Dingerino, if you're into that sort of thing. And for the first episode, we'll dive into the revolutionary world of DC Vertigo's Watchmen, one of the most iconic graphic novels of all time. Created by Alan Moore, illustrated by Dave Gibbons, and colored by John Higgins, Watchmen didn't just tell a story. It reshaped the way we think about superheroes and how we view comic books as a whole. This isn't just a tale of superheroes gone awry. It's a story of creative ambition, corporate influence, and the rise of the mature comics movement. Along the way, we'll also touch a bit on the history of DC Vertigo, the imprint that grew out of the same zeitgeist that Watchmen helped define. So sit back and join us as we dive into the depths of the multiverse and explore the infinite origins of Watchmen. Set in an alternative 1985 at the height of the Cold War, the story of Watchmen begins with the murder of Edward Morgan Blake, also known as the Comedian, a government agent and former costume vigilante. Rorschach, a paranoid and unyielding detective, investigates the murder and suspects a conspiracy targeting former superheroes. He warns his old allies Ozymandias, Night Owl, Silk Spectre, and the godlike Dr. Manhattan that somebody may be targeting former costumed heroes following the enacting of the Keene Act, a bill outlawing supes from working in the United States. As Rorschach digs deeper, Dr. Manhattan, overwhelmed by public scrutiny due to people in his life contracting cancer, exiles himself to Mars, leaving the US and the world vulnerable to nuclear aggression. Meanwhile, Silk Spectre reconnects with Night Owl and the two resume their vigilante activities. The plot thickens when Rorschach and Night Owl uncover that the former hero Ozymandias is planning a scheme to fake an alien invasion by unleashing a genetically engineered monster in New York City, killing millions but uniting the superpowers against a common enemy. The three remaining Watchmen confront Ozymandias, but it's too late. His plan has already succeeded. The world, now united, steps back from nuclear annihilation, and thus the Cold War ends. Rorschach, unwilling to compromise his principles, threatens to expose the truth, prompting Dr. Manhattan to kill him to preserve peace. Dr. Manhattan then departs Earth, leaving humanity to its uncertain future, while Rorschach's journal, which contained evidence of the conspiracy, was secretly mailed to a tavern, suggesting the truth may yet emerge. Watchmen is a complex exploration of morality, power, and the consequences of heroism in a flawed world, with its ambiguous ending, leaving readers to ponder the price of peace. Watchmen originally began as a pitch for a project featuring Charlton Comics characters who had recently been acquired by DC, including the likes of Blue Beetle, The Question, Captain Atom, and Captain Marvel, who would later be rebranded as Shazam after a dispute with Marvel Comics over the character's name. Alan Moore envisioned a dark, complex story that would subvert traditional superhero tropes. However, DC quickly realized that Moore's story would render the characters unusable for future projects, so Moore and artist Dave Gibbons reworked the idea, creating original characters inspired by the Charlton lineup. Rorschach was based on The Question, but reimagined as a grim, uncompromising vigilante. Dr. Manhattan drew his inspirations from Captain Atom and Captain Marvel, while exploring the implications of godlike power in the hands of man. The comedian took his cues from Peacemaker, embodying nihilism and brutality and violence. Ozymandias, inspired by Peter Cannon, became the tragic mastermind. Night Owl mirrored Blue Beetle, with a grounded, gadget-heavy approach, while Silk Spectre filled the archetype of the femme fatale while critiquing the genre's treatment of women. When Watchmen hit shelves in the year between 1986 and 1987 as a 12-issue limited series, it was unlike anything readers had ever seen. Featuring mature storytelling and a heavy deconstruction of superheroes, Watchmen asked what it would truly mean to live in a world with costumed vigilantes. A world similar to our own, where heroes weren't altruistic paragons, but flawed individuals, grappling with real issues like trauma, ego, mental health, sexual identity, and moral ambiguity. With the Cold War in full swing at the time of writing, the conflict would serve as a backdrop for the series, with real-world versions of the people and events of the time being reflected on the pages. The real-life threat of nuclear annihilation informs many of the characters' decisions and sets the overall tone for the story. Far from the escapism of other titles at the time, Watchmen tackled themes of power and corruption, fear, morality, and the human condition, while its meta-narrative, the comic within a comic Tales of the Black Freighter, added commentaries on guilt, madness, and hubris. These themes, partnered with Dave Gibbons' unparalleled and detailed artwork, helped Watchmen to blur the line between hero and villain, leaving readers to wrestle with complex questions. These elements turned Watchmen into a cultural phenomenon. It became the first comic book to ever win a Hugo Award and has been repeatedly included in Time magazine's list of the 100 best novels and graphic novels of all time. Watchmen shattered expectations and redefined the medium, but its legacy is complicated due in part to the fallout from a controversy between Alan Moore and DC Comics. The controversy surrounding Watchmen boils down to creative control and broken trust. When Watchmen was published in 1986 and 1987, Moore and artist Dave Gibbons agreed that the rights would revert to them once the book went out of print. However, Watchmen became a massive commercial success, staying perpetually in print, effectively keeping the rights in DC's hands indefinitely. This left Moore feeling betrayed, as he believed DC intentionally structured the deal to trap his work. The tension further escalated with DC's increasing commercialization of Watchmen, including merchandise and spin-offs, which Moore detested. He saw these as exploitation of his work, violating his artistic integrity. Moore was further alienated by DC's broader corporate practices, like imposing creative restrictions and allegedly blacklisting creators who had supported him. By the late 80s, Moore had cut all ties with DC entirely, refusing royalties and disavowing adaptations of his work. The fallout set the stage for his anti-corporate stance, and his disdain for the comic book industry still resonates as a defining element of his career. However, it was due to this success that then DC editor Karen Berger and other DC executives would found DC Vertigo Comics in 1993. Seeking to publish adult-oriented titles such as Neil Gaiman's Sandman, Hellblazer, and Preacher. Vertigo allowed writers more freedom to explore adult themes without having to adhere to the constraints of the modern superhero mythos. DC continued to print these adult titles until 2020, when Vertigo was rebranded as DC Black Label. Despite all this, Watchmen stands the test of time, and its legacy is still felt almost 40 years later in many forms. You have Zack Snyder's 2009 faithful cinematic recreation, and HBO's 2019 sequel series, both being critical successes. In print, we've gotten a prequel in Before Watchmen, exploring the unknown backstories of the series' characters, along with Jeff Johns' Doomsday Clock in 2017, finally merging many of not just Watchmen, but other Charlton and Vertigo Comics characters into the mainline DC continuity, and influencing the DC Infinite Frontier relaunch in 2021 and the current 2024 DC All-In relaunch projects. Almost 4 decades later, Watchmen continues to stand the test of time as a cornerstone of graphic literature, revered by fans and even studied in academia, and legitimatized comics as a medium not just for kids, but also adults. Watchmen endures because it's not just a superhero story. It's a meditation on power, identity, and the human condition. It challenged the conventions of its mediums and continues to inspire new generations of creators. It stands as both a cautionary tale about expanding something meant to be standalone, yet proof that doing so can result in a generation-spanning impact on pop culture. Whether you view it as a masterpiece, or a critique of heroism, or even a cautionary tale about creative ownership, one thing is clear. Watchmen changed everything. And in doing so, it became timeless. Thanks again, guys, for joining me on this deep dive into the history and legacy of the Watchmen and DC Vertigo. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and holler in the comments. Leave me some suggestions on what origins to cover next. I've been thinking about doing some origins on a lot of different comics and characters like Star Trek, DC's Warlord, Transformers, and other titles. But since I'm making these videos for you, the viewer, any and all of your input is welcome. Until next time, I'm Din J, and remember, every story has infinite origins.